Okay, Algebra 2, we are going to graph reciprocal functions today. So the parent function for a reciprocal function is f of x equals 1 over x. Okay, so let's just go ahead and graph that. Let's make a little chart. The number that we usually pick first when we pick numbers to put into a graph is 0. But what happens if we pick 0 for x here? We get undefined because we get 1 over 0. So that doesn't work. So let's pick 1. If we pick 1, y equals 1. If we pick 2, y equals a half. If we pick -1, y equals -1. And if we pick -2, y equals -a half. So let's go ahead and graph those points. 1, 1, 2, a half. What happens if we pick a half for x? We get 1 over a half, which equals 2. So a half is up here at 2. So this is what our graph looks like. And then we're going to have the negative, -1, -1. -2, -a half, and then -a half would be -2. So it would look like this. So there's two parts to this graph. There's a part here in the first quadrant, and there's a part down in the third quadrant. So the type of graph, this is called a hyperbola. That's what it's called, these two types. The domain of a hyperbola is x not equal to 0, because as you can see on here, we can't put x equal to 0 or y equals undefined. And looking at the graph, you can see the range is y not equal to 0. And there are two asymptotes. There's a vertical asymptote, which is vertical right here. The vertical asymptote is I did that wrong. Vertical asymptote is x equals 0. And the horizontal asymptote is right here. And that is y equals 0. So that is the parent function of a reciprocal function. Now let's see what we're going to do if we have some transformations and how it changes for the standard form. So the standard form of a reciprocal function is f of x equals a over x minus h plus k, like that. Okay, and h, this part here on the bottom, is the horizontal shift. If it's positive, it goes left, and if it's negative, it goes right. Remember that we've had transformations like that before where it seems backwards. The left and right seems backwards. K, the thing we stick on the end, is the vertical shift. I didn't put an L there. Is a vertical shift. If it's plus, it goes up. And if it's negative, it goes down. And if A is negative, the function is reflected across the x-axis. So we got some negative number there. And if the absolute value of A is greater than 1, then it is a vertical stretch. And if the absolute value is less than 1, then it is a vertical compression. And the asymptotes, we've got a vertical asymptote and we have a horizontal asymptote. And the vertical asymptote is going to be x equals h, and the horizontal asymptote is y equals k. Those are the asymptotes of the standard form. So let's work on these examples right here of writing the functions from words. Okay, number one, the reciprocal parent function is translated 4 units right and 3 units down, then reflected across the x-axis. So let's see what we can do there. Okay, so the parent function, remember, is just 1 over x. So translated 4 units right, remember, is a negative h, so it's going to be -4 on the bottom right here. And then 3 units down, so we're going to subtract a 3 on the end, and it's reflected across the x-axis, so we got to put a negative out there. So that is going to be our equation. If we want to write it so it looks a little neater, it would be f of x equals -1 over x minus 4 minus 3. And the vertical asymptote is going to be x equals 4, and the horizontal asymptote is y equals -3. All right, let's look at the next one. Number 2. The reciprocal function, so I'm going to start with this, is translated 7 units up. That's that right there. 1 unit left. Then vertically stretched by a factor of 2. So that means we've got to erase this and put a 2 on top, like that. And the vertical asymptote is x equals -1, and the horizontal asymptote is y equals 7. Okay, remember that this goes with this, but the signs are opposite. We have a plus here, we have a negative there, and these match, but the signs match. All right, let's look at number 3. All right, the reciprocal function has a vertical asymptote located at x equals -2. So I'm going to write that over here. X equals -2. That, remember that that goes down here with an opposite sign. And a horizontal asymptote of y equals 5. That sticks on the end with the same sign, and so that's going to be our equation right here for number 3. Okay, now let's look at graphing. The next section is actually graphing these, so this is how you're going to do it. We've got our graph, and we have our function. This is how I would do it. I would look at my function and I would write my asymptotes. My vertical asymptote is x equals 0 because there is nothing down at the bottom with the x. And my horizontal asymptote is y equals -2 because of this 2 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and graph those. Vertical asymptote, x equals 0, horizontal asymptote, y equals -2. Your vertical and horizontal asymptotes will divide it into 4 parts. You're either always going to graph here and here, or you're going to graph here and here. So all you have to decide, let me erase those, is which you want, which you're going to graph. So then to decide, I would pick a couple points on either side of my vertical asymptote. My vertical asymptote is 0, so I'm going to pick 1. If I pick 1 for x, I get 1 over 1 is 1 minus 2, that's -1. If I pick a 2 for x, I get 1/2 minus 2. I get 1/2 minus 2. So that's going to be -1 1/2. If I pick a half for x, I get 2 minus 2, so I get 0. Right? Then I got to pick some points on the other side of my vertical asymptote, so let's pick -1. If I pick -1, I'm going to have -1 minus 2. That's going to be -3. If I pick -2, I'm going to have -1/2 minus 2, which is -2.5. And if I pick -1/2, I have -2 minus 2, which is -4. So let's graph these and see what they look like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I've got 1, -1, 2, -1.5, 1/2, 0. So here's what it looks like there. And then I've got -1, -3, 1, 2, 3. And I've got -2, -2.5, 1, 2.5, -1/2, -4. So it looks like this. And there's what my graph looks like. And the things down below here, we already have our vertical and horizontal asymptote. Our domain goes with our vertical asymptote. I'm going to write it up here. Domain matches vertical asymptote, and it's x not equal to 0. Range is the horizontal, y not equal to -2. And that is the answer to number 4. So let's look at number 5. F of x equals 1 over x plus 3. Okay, let's do the things on the bottom first. We've got the domain, we've got the range, we've got the vertical asymptote, and we've got the horizontal asymptote. Okay, vertical asymptote, x equals -3. So that means our range is x not equal to -3. Our horizontal, y equals 0. So that means our range is y not equal to 0. So those are things on the bottom. So let's go ahead and graph our function. Let's graph our asymptotes first. We've got x equal -3, which is right here. Y equals 0, which is right here. So then we can pick a couple points on either side of x equals -3. So let's pick x equals -2. And if we get that, we get 1 over -2 plus 3, which is 1 over 1, which is 1. If we pick -1, we get 1 over -1 plus 3, which is 1/2. Okay, let's pick, and if we pick 0, we get a third. And then pick on the other side of -3, so let's pick -4. We get 1 over -4 plus 3. That gives us -1. And if we pick -5, we get 1 over -5 plus 3. That gives us -1/2. So let's go ahead and graph these and see what it looks like. -2, 1, -1, 1/2, 0, a third. You can see that it's going to look like this. It always gets close to the asymptotes. Here it's getting close to this asymptote. Here it's getting close to this one. That, since we know this is here, we know the other side's going to be down here. So we're going to have -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -5, -1/2. So it's going to look like this. And at that point, you can just go ahead and graph it in. Okay, let's look at number 6. We've got f of x equals -4 over x plus 1. Let's do our domain, our range, our vertical asymptote, and our horizontal asymptote. Okay, vertical asymptote, x equals 0, because there's nothing down here with the x. Domain, x doesn't equal 0. Horizontal, y equals 1. Range, y doesn't equal 1. Let's go ahead and graph it. And our vertical is x equals 0. Our horizontal, y equals 1. Let's pick some points on either side of 0 since we have x equals 0 here. Let's pick 1. That's going to be -4 plus 1, which is -3. If we put a 2 in, that's going to be -4 over 2 plus 1, which is -2 plus 1, which is -1. And I'm not going to pick 3 because that's going to give me a fraction. But if I picked 4, I would get -4 over 4 plus 1. That's going to be -1 plus 1, which equals 0. So we can go ahead and graph that one right now. 1, -3, 1, 2, 3, 2, -1, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. So it looks like this. And then if we pick some on the other side, if we pick -1, we're going to get +4 plus 1, which is 5. And if we pick -2, we're going to get -4 over -2, which is 2 plus 1, which is 3. And again, if we picked -4, that would be 1 plus 1, which is 2. So if we graph those, we get -1, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. And remember that they get close to the asymptote. So that's what this one looks like. Now let's look at this for a minute. This -4 on top made it reflect over the x-axis. So always before, they've been here and here, but because of that negative, it reflected and we had it be down here and up here. And if you notice, look how far away the turn is from where the asymptotes come together. See how far away that is? The ones that we did before were a lot closer to that. That's because there's a 4 up here and not a 1. If we had a 1, those would be much closer, but a bigger number up there makes it kind of widen out and be farther away right there. Okay, let's look at number 7. We've got f of x equals 3 over x minus 2 minus 2. Lots of 2's. So let's look at our domain, our vertical asymptote, and our range, and our horizontal asymptote. Vertical asymptote, x equals 2. So domain, x doesn't equal 2. Horizontal, y equals -2. So our range, y doesn't equal -2. And let's go ahead and graph these. Put our asymptotes in, x equals 2, y equals -2. So let's make a little chart. We're going to pick numbers on either side of 2. So let's start with 3. If we put a 3 in, we get 3 over 3 minus 2 minus 2. So 3 minus 2 is 1. So 3 over 1, we get 3 minus 2, and that gives us a 1. If we put in a 4, let's put in a 5 because that's going to make a nicer number for us. We would get 3 over 5 minus 2 minus 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. So 3 over 3 is 1. So we get 1 minus 2, and that gives us a -1. Let's put in one on the other side. How about a 1? we get a 3 over 1 minus 2 minus 2. 1 minus 2 is negative 1, so that's going to be a negative 3 minus 2, or a negative 5. And let's see, if we put a 0 in, that's not going to be nice, but how about if we put a negative 1? We would get 3 over negative 1 minus 2, which is a negative 3, so that's going to be a negative 1 minus 2, or a negative 3. And let's graph these points. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 1. So you know it's going to look like this. And on the other side, 1, negative 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and negative 1, negative 3, 1, 2, 3. So this one looks like that. And that's what our graph looks like for number 7. Okay, 2 more. And remember, when we're doing these, that if you feel like you know how to do them and you don't want to do every example that I do, that's fine. You can always come back and check it later if you're working on homework and you get stuck. All right, we got our domain, we've got our vertical asymptote, our range, and our horizontal asymptote. Horizontal asymptote, x equals negative 4. So domain is x not equal to negative 4. Horizontal, y equals negative 7. So y does not equal negative 7. So let's go ahead and graph it. We got some, I'm going to make my graph a little bit more like this because we're going all the way down to y equals negative 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll go down to 10. And let's graph our asymptotes. X equals negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And y equals negative 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to look like this. If we make a chart and pick some numbers on either side of negative 4. So let's pick negative 3. And we get 2 over negative 3 plus 4 minus 7. So negative 3 plus 4 is 1. So we get 2 minus 7, which is negative 5. All right, if we pick negative 2, we get 2 over negative 2 plus 4 minus 7. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2, so 2 over 2 is 1. So we have 1 minus 7, which is negative 6. And then I'll pick on the other side. So let's pick negative 5. And we get 2 over negative 5 plus 4. That's going to give us a negative 1. That's going to be negative 2 minus 7, which is negative 9. And if we pick a negative 6, that's a negative 2. So this is negative 1 minus 7, which is negative 8. So let's see what this looks like. We've got negative 3, 1, 2, 3, negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got negative 2, negative 6. So it's going to look something like this. And we've got negative 5, negative 9. This is 7, 8, 9. And negative 6, negative 8. Looks like that. So that's what our graph looks like for number 8. Number 9, the last one. F of x equals negative 1 over x minus 5 plus 3. So this negative 1 on top is going to flip it. So you know it's going to be flipped on the other side. We got our domain, our range, our vertical asymptote, and our horizontal. Vertical, x equals 5. Domain, x doesn't equal 5. Horizontal, y equals 3. Range, y doesn't equal 3. Let's go ahead and graph. put our asymptotes. X equals 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And y equals 3. And if we make a little chart on either side of 5, so let's pick 6 first. We have negative 1 over 6 minus 5 plus 3. That's going to be negative 1 plus 3, which is 2. And if we pick, let's see, everything else is going to be a fraction. If we pick a 7, that's going to be negative 1 over 7 minus 5 plus 3. That's going to be negative a half plus 3. Negative a half plus 3, which is 2.5. Okay, then let's go the other way. Let's pick 4. If we pick 4, negative 1 over 4 minus 5 plus 3, that's going to be 1 plus 3, which is 4. And if we pick a 3, that gives us a half plus 3, which is 3.5. So let's go ahead and graph this. We've got 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, and 7, 2.5. So it looks, it's going to be here. And then we've got 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3, 3.5. So this one's going to look like this. Okay, and that's the answer to number 9. Next one, we'll be graphing rational instead of just reciprocal.